Hello, and welcome to CASAC's online video training program.
Today, our training will be on stress management. My name is Trish Whetstone, and I am the Prevention Education Coordinator here at CASAC, which I've been employed with since 2016. I got my Bachelor of Science in Psychology with a minor in Public Health from SUNY Fredonia, and some of my professional trainings through CASAC include a training on Google Drive, the Talk, which was a training on current drug trends, Putting the S in Stress, which Alex and I actually did for some staff at some schools, so we do have some experience in this. Did some trainings on children living in a chemically dependent home, electronic nicotine delivery systems, and our hidden in plain sight presentation, which looks at ways drugs are concealed, and again, some more current drug trends.
And I am Alex Rodriguez. I've been a prevention educator with CASAC since 2018. I graduated from SUNY Fredonia with my Bachelor's of Science in Education, and my professional training roster includes Putting the S in Stress, children living in a chemically dependent home, electronic nicotine delivery systems, and hidden in plain sight, many of which I've done before with my partner Trish Whetstone for a variety of audiences, professional, in the community, educators, all across the spectrum there. We're going to take you through our objectives. Before we begin, we'll be talking about defining the flavors of stress and identifying the causes of these different types of stress.
We're going to look at ways to cope with that stress, some long-term and short-term management strategies, and then we'll look at what a growth mindset is. We'll define that and identify skills to promote that growth mindset with a couple of different strategies, because all of that still relates with the way that we can manage our stress.
So what is stress? In general, stress is a response to demands placed on us in our body. As we go through this presentation, we'll be taking a more in-depth look at stress, where we'll be defining it as the result of mishandled emotions, which we refer to as the Big 8. When these emotions are ignored, denied, or handled incorrectly, that causes stress. And like we stated in the objectives, there are many flavors of stress that we'll be taking you through in the next couple of slides.
The first two flavors of stress that we'll be going over is eustress and distress. Eustress is good or positive stress, things such as planning a wedding, a party or big event, performing in front of an audience, taking a test, or playing a sport are things that we typically think as positive experiences that we want to experience, but they still can be stressful and they can still cause the stress response. Sometimes we think of stress as always being distress, which is bad or negative stress. When we're injured, there's a death in the family, we go through a breakup, divorce, lose a job, or possibly a friendship or relationship, we will experience distress, which is more negative stress.
Acute stress is short-term stress that is often caused by a specific event, like Trish mentioned, taking a test or riding a roller coaster, and can actually be helpful in small doses. It's weird to think of stress as something that can encourage us, as something that is positive, when we often think of it as this big negative force. But acute stress can be motivational, can inspire us to put in that extra 5 minutes of practice, do a little bit more studying, go and train just a little bit longer to better deal with whatever is causing that stress, whether it is a game or a performance. Chronic stress, on the other hand, is long-term stress that can often be difficult to identify the cause of. It might be an unhappy home life, it might be difficulty in school, but it is stress that continues to come back, stress that is there all the time and can often become part of a person's routine or accepted as normal, especially when it is difficult to identify where that stress might be coming from. And instead of trying to deal with it, we just move on with our lives with this stress looming over us.
It is probably no surprise that stress can affect our health. It doesn't really feel good, but can actually affect our body on the inside and the outside as well. About 43% of adults in the US suffer from adverse health effects caused by stress. This leads to over $300 billion in medical bills and lost productivity in America alone. Chronic stress forces our muscles into tension, and it also releases the stress hormone called cortisol, which we'll be looking at in a bit. Just some of the health effects that this can cause is headaches and migraines, upset stomach and other digestive issues, pains in our chest, increased blood pressure, and loss of sleep.
In the last slide, Trish introduced us to cortisol, the hormone that is released during times of stress and is the cause of many of the physical signs and symptoms that we associate with that stress response. We're going to show you a brief video that explores some of these physical symptoms and also gives you a couple of reasons for why they might occur.
Have you run away from a saber-toothed tiger recently? Maybe you haven't, but the stress response you feel when you are late to work or the growl your stomach makes when you haven't had anything but an energy bar and coffee in the morning is the same stress response we had when we were cavemen. That stress response is called fight or flight. Grunk is a real-life caveman. He goes to work hunting saber-tooths and rabbits for his family. Unfortunately, the saber-tooth chases Grunk on occasion, and his physical and emotional stress levels go way up. When this happens, Grunk's body's intelligence kicks in to help him escape. His heart rate goes way up, his blood pressure spikes, more adrenaline is produced, and the body moves the blood away from the digestive tract and into the muscles as digesting food isn't a priority at that moment. Grunk eventually does escape and rests at home, and after 15 to 20 minutes, his body resets and begins to operate normally again. Now, your body doesn't know the difference between running from a saber-toothed tiger or rushing your kids to school. Your body's stress response is triggered in both situations, so your blood pressure, heart rate, and food digestion is the same as Grunk's when he's running away from a tiger. These types of situations could happen every day in our culture. The difference between you and the caveman is the caveman was able to relax in his cave soon after he finished stressing out. So for the whole day, the caveman would stress the duration of a hunt, which would last maybe an hour. You, on the other hand, have to deal with the stress of racing your kids to school, traffic, work, relationships, and everything else that life constantly throws at you. Plus, add in the constant chemical stress that comes from the unhealthy foods we eat, and it's like you are running from the saber-tooth all day long. The solution is to build your own cave. You have to build your own cave every day, and it means finding some peace in the pileup of traffic while driving to work. It means going to bed on time instead of staying up late binging on your favorite TV shows. It means taking some time to go outside and do some relaxing work instead of locking yourself up in your office. Otherwise, this chronic stress will open you up to most diseases because your immune system will tank and a lack of nutrients that your body needs due to not being able to digest your food properly. Add to that the fact that your adrenals, which are the glands that sit atop your kidney and decide where your hormones go, are so active with the abundance of stress you experience and put into your body, you will develop adrenal fatigue. Put all this together, and now you know why stress is the start of all disease processes. How can we make our fight or flight more effective? How can we turn it off when we don't need it and bring it up when it's necessary? Ask yourself what you are putting in your body for energy. Your body is probably asking your brain for those artificial stimulants you gave it, like coffee, processed sugars, or genetically modified foods, because it's confused on why the adrenals aren't filling up like they used to. You have sucked your adrenals dry of hormones that didn't need to be active in the first place. That's huge because we are taking a finite source and sucking it dry. What people may not know is that a lot of things trigger the fight or flight response. Emotional stresses, eating unhealthy foods, overreacting to life's daily challenges, going through tough emotional times, all trigger fight or flight. However, that leaves a lot of areas where we can improve it. So if this video has successfully stressed you out with all the info it's loaded you up with, you should take a minute to relax. At least you don't have a tiger running after you. If you always put limit on everything you do, physical or anything else, it will spread into your work and into your life. There are no limits. There are only plateaus. And you must not stay there. You must go beyond them. Bruce Lee.
While the dietary aspect is not something we'll be focusing on in this presentation, the idea of building your own cave is one we will explore in the next few slides through some short-term coping strategies. And a lot of them are easy, quick things that can be tailored for use wherever you are.
As Alex stated, our short-term management strategies, the ways that we build our cave, don't have to be a big production. They're things that we can really do anytime, anywhere, and we'll go over different strategies such as breathing exercises, physical exercises to relieve some of those health ailments, the muscle tension, as well as things like laughter and other things that can just boost our mood and change our emotions.
One of the first short-term stress management techniques that we'll be looking at is hearty laughter. And this could be extended to just about anything that evokes a laughter or happiness response. It might sound weird to say, but things that make you happy make you happy. Anything that you get enjoyment out of is going to release chemicals, going to release endorphins that will work to combat that cortisol, lower your body's stress hormones, and help turn things around or act as a reset for your body. Hearty laughter absolutely does that, stimulates circulation and relaxes the muscles as well, and in the long term actually improves immune system function, can act as a pain reliever, and increase personal satisfaction. Weirdly enough, while your body can't differentiate between different kinds of stress, or at least gives you the same stress response, whether you're being chased by a tiger or driving your kids to school, it also has a difficult time differentiating between actual stimulated laughter and fake laughter. The body is programmed to respond with that hormone release no matter what kind of laughter you're doing. And we'll do the same thing whether you're laughing at a joke, laughing at a funny video on the internet, or forcing yourself to laugh at everyday things. And taking a moment to force yourself to laugh, which sounds odd and does take some practice, can actually provide a short-term instant hormone release to combat some of those stress symptoms.
All right, the next management strategy is probably one that we've heard a lot, and we might even roll our eyes at when somebody says, take a deep breath. I know that before I started at CASAC, I used to think that deep breathing didn't work for me because it's kind of one of those strategies that is overused and we hear a lot, but there is a lot of science behind why it really does work and can be effective for a lot of people when dealing with stress. And that's because it sends more oxygen to our brain so that our thought patterns can be more clear, and it also lowers our blood pressure and heart rate. It resets the body in a similar way that laughter does, counteracting that stress. Now, there are many different deep breathing techniques that you can try out, that you can research, but one of the main ways that is really effective is to inhale through your nose and then exhale through your mouth. This breath, though, should originate from the stomach. So you inhale starting at the stomach and you slowly breathe in all the way up your body, up your torso, and you hold it maybe for a couple seconds and then you exhale through the mouth. To keep your breaths controlled, you might want to count in for 4 counts, hold for 4, release for 4. There's many different ways that you can do this. Closing your eyes can get you more into the deep breaths, and possibly placing your hand on your stomach to feel those breaths can be calming as well. And one of the strategies we really like is called the figure 8 technique, and I'm going to demonstrate that on the screen. You make an 8 and you breathe in as you go up on the 8, and then you breathe out. You breathe in and you breathe out. And you'll do this as slow as you need or as many times as you need. It's something you can doodle on a paper in a work meeting in school, or even something you can just trace on your hand or your leg under the table. Deep breathing is really great because it shouldn't be huffy and puffy and loud. It's pretty quiet, and if it's controlled, nobody really even has to know that you're helping yourself relax in that situation.
The next strategy that we're looking at is getting active. And like deep breathing, this is a strategy that I will often greet with a sigh, not respond to super well. But it does have scientific background behind why it works, the kinds of things that it does to help combat that stress response and the stress chemicals, that cortisol that our body releases. Exercise releases feel-good neurotransmitters like endorphins and dopamine, those chemicals that produce that happy response in your brain. In addition, getting active can relieve muscular tension and strengthen the heart. If you remember, part of the stress response that our body feels is not just in the breathing, not just in the heart rate, but in that tensing, which can cause muscle pain, can cause that abdominal pain and headaches as well. And so getting active can kind of act like a body reset button. It helps get that breathing under control, helps to regulate it and relieve the muscle tension that you might be feeling as a result of that stress. Yoga can have additional benefits for stress management as well, because it can act as a combination of some of these stress management techniques that we've spoken about, as it incorporates activity, possibly with deep breathing as well. There are links between stretching and breathing. Again, it can relieve that tension through stretching, relieve that anxiety, as it kind of incorporates elements of meditation, which we'll be looking at in another slide or two, helping a person focus on what they're doing in the moment, getting the mind off of those stressors, the things that might be causing that stress. One thing that is important to note about being active is that it doesn't have to be something incredibly intense, and that's where my own reticence came from whenever somebody would tell me to go and get active or to exercise to combat the stress that I was feeling. You don't have to go and run a marathon. You don't have to go and lift hundreds of pounds at a weight room. Getting active can be something as simple as taking a walk, playing Wii Sports, anything that will get your heart rate up, going for a hike, riding a bike, something as simple as that, even just doing some twists in your chair, something that you can do in your office, raising your arms above your head, short, quick things that you can do on your way to a meeting, in between classes. Anything that gets the heart moving will help combat that stress.
The last short-term stress management strategy we'll be talking about is meditation. And meditation is a very complex strategy that has been studied by people their entire lives. There's many books on meditation, many different things that we could focus on. We're just going to go into a little short snippet on what meditation is in a very simple way that you can practice meditation. Meditation works in a lot of the same ways as the strategies we've talked about previously, in that it elicits a relaxation response, regulating our hormones and relaxing our muscles, of course, incorporating deep breathing, but it also strengthens our mind and really changes our perspective, which is where we'll be shifting in this next half of our presentation. So meditation employs deep breathing techniques. You just sit comfortably in any way that you'd like. You don't have to sit cross-legged on the floor like the Buddha that we always think about. It's just a time for you to be comfortable. You can focus on one spot on the wall, or you can close your eyes. A lot of times people have different thoughts or maybe stereotypes about what meditation is, but basically what it is, it's focusing in the moment on your breathing and allowing your thoughts to come and go and not judging your thoughts. It's not clearing your mind of thoughts completely. It's just learning to not judge those thoughts, focus on your breathing, which takes your mind off of whatever is stressing you out, and again, relaxes your body physically as well. A really great app is called the Headspace app, and it actually is just an orange circle dot like this in a white box, and it is a great app that comes in a free version that you can look up and download, and it's a great way to get started with meditation.
So the strategies that we've looked at so far are more geared towards helping with that short-term stress. Again, that short-term stress can often be beneficial, motivational, not always. I'm not going to say that short-term stress is always going to be a positive thing, but there are times where we have that short-term stress, and in the moment we just want to refocus, we want to get ourselves back on track, and that's where those short-term management techniques are really going to shine. When we look at chronic stress or that distress, it can often be like an iceberg, where a lot of it is below the surface, and that can make it very difficult to pin down. And unfortunately, when it comes to long-term stress, people aren't as willing to do anything about it. Maybe willing is the wrong word. It's difficult to deal with because we don't always know where the root of that problem is going to be, because it's hidden. And that leads us to then accept it, to assimilate that stress, and to just live our lives thinking, well, all right, this is okay. This is just something I have to deal with. And that's not a way that we deal with the vast majority of our problems. For instance, if you came home and your house was on fire, the last thing you would do is walk in, sit down at the table, and just go, well, all right, I guess I just live like this now. We would take steps to correct the problem, and stress should be no different. When we look at that long-term stress, if you remember at the beginning, we said that in-depth definition of stress is mishandled emotion. And that mishandled emotion is going to take root in what we call the big 8 emotions, depicted on the screen here: fear, anger, sadness, jealousy, love, shame, disgust, and happiness. Now, it might seem a little weird to think of stress as something that is caused by an emotion. I'm sure you can think of plenty of times where you've been stressed and weren't feeling anything emotional. There wasn't any kind of emotional stimuli involved. But I actually have a story that I would like to share. As I was doing some research with Trish for this presentation, we found an article that was written by a psychologist who was dealing with a patient and started off with the same kind of spiel. Often long-term stress is this thing that is rooted in emotion. In order to deal with it, you have to find that emotion and handle it the right way. And the person that he was working with was understandably confused. What he had her do was keep a journal of all the times that she felt one of these big 8 emotions, and to chronicle not only when she felt it, but how often she felt it. And at the end of the next week, when she came in for her appointment, she was able to look back through this log and see all the tally marks of when she was feeling these emotions, how often she was feeling these emotions, and come to find out the one that she was feeling the most was jealousy. And when she was asked to explain that, that jealousy was coming from her work. She had a supervisor at work who was taking credit for a lot of the things that were happening, a lot of the work that she was doing, and she wasn't getting recognition for that. And that jealousy was causing stress. And that stress was not only affecting her performance at work, but it was affecting her physically on a lot of those ways that we looked at earlier. She was having trouble sleeping, constant headaches, there was weight gain, but it was also affecting her relationships, putting a strain on her marriage, strain on relationships with her coworkers, and it was something that she really wanted to work at. And knowing that it was caused by this jealousy, by this issue at work, gave her a starting place, gave her a point to say, all right, I know what's causing this. Now how can I deal with it? What do I need to do? How do I need to approach this person? How do I need to handle this emotion better to mitigate the stress that I'm feeling?
A more long-term stress management strategy is what we call the power of self-talk. And self-talk is basically the way that we talk to ourselves. It can either be in a positive way, like I've got this, I'm feeling good, I can do this, things are looking up, or it can be negative, where we maybe blame our feelings on the situations, like why does this always happen to me, or I can't believe this, I'm so unlucky. And sometimes we use extremes, like always or never. When we talk about communication skills in a little bit, we'll talk about those extremes and how they're kind of unhealthy. Positive self-talk is great because it helps our mood, it helps us feel good, and also improves our confidence, so we feel more apt to deal with life around us and deal with our stressors. It's that self-encouragement that really helps us. The way that we think changes the way that we feel, which changes the way that we act. And then in turn, when we act a certain way, in a good positive way, we'll think more positive thoughts. So it's this great cycle. And once we rewire ourselves to be in that more positive mindset of thoughts, feelings, and actions, we are better apt to deal with our stressors. The first type of self-talk that we're going to talk about is practicing gratitude. And this allows us to rewire our thoughts to be more positive. The ways that we can change our emotions and our actions is through practicing gratitude. And one of the greatest ways to do it is to journal. I always tell my students that you don't necessarily have to keep a daily journal like, "Dear diary, this happened." You can even just write these things down and rip it up and throw it away. Getting those stressors out written down is a great way to deal with that. It's kind of like our own little therapy session. And gratitude, that could be something that we record and look back on, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. However, when we write something down, it sticks in our mind more. And again, changing and rewiring and practicing that within our brain will be really helpful. So one thing that you can do is you can try and list 5 things you are grateful every single day and kind of try and make them a little bit different. Over time, they can be the same. Like you can be grateful for your family every day, but look for different little things. Like maybe I'm really grateful for this warm cup of tea, or I'm grateful for the fact that it's actually sunny outside today. Those little things are what can really change our mindset when we look for the positive in those little joys in life. Celebrate our little accomplishments, like, you know what, I got up early today and I didn't sleep in, I didn't snooze the alarm, or I had a really good time at the movies last night. Something really simple can help us practice gratitude and optimism, focusing on the more positive things in life rather than the negative, trying to move past those and just jotting down or writing down those positive things.
Positive self-talk and practicing gratitude are important steps in developing what we call a growth mindset. First coined by Dr. Carol Dweck, the term growth mindset is used to refer to one of 2 beliefs regarding a person's abilities and where they come from. And where they come from can either encourage and motivate a person, or can be used to discourage a person. Growth mindset is the idea that ability and talent can be reinforced, augmented by hard work, study, and practice. It sits opposite from a fixed mindset in which a person believes that these abilities are inherited or come from within. They can't grow or be developed. They are fixed. They are a constant. What you are born with is what you have. Going back to the idea of positive self-talk, our mindset determines how we react to failure, whether we see it as motivation or discouragement. Positive self-talk, and by extension, a growth mindset, see failure as an opportunity to learn. I can get smarter, I can get stronger, I can work harder, I can achieve more. You might be thinking to yourself, this is all well and good, but my boss, my coworker, my spouse doesn't subscribe to this whole growth mindset thing. It's an unfortunate reality that we live in a very task-oriented society. And because of this, the workplace doesn't often foster a growth mindset. A workplace that does so is rare because it requires vulnerability, something we're taught from a very young age to reject. I'm going to put in a plug for Brené Brown's Netflix special, The Call to Courage, and would recommend this to any boss, administrator, or person of authority. Anybody at all in the professional world really could benefit from this. In this video, Ms. Brown says that she has so many employers, so many administrators come to her with the desire to see more creativity, more risk-taking, and more daring on the part of their employees, while in the same breath condemning vulnerability. Brené's whole ideology revolves around vulnerability and asserts that being creative, courageous, being open to a growth mindset requires an openness to being vulnerable. It requires the acknowledgement that, yes, failure is an option, but that's okay. How are you going to move on? How are you going to learn or grow from that? If you aren't in a position to make a big change in your environment, that's okay, whether it's a work environment, home environment, or a school environment. In the next few slides, we're going to be looking at ways to foster a growth mindset from behind the scenes. And of course, we're going to go right back to emotion because emotion is really important. Self-regulation of our emotions is essential to combating long-term stress, but recognizing emotions in other people plays into our idea of fostering this growth mindset in your current environment. Emotions are like traffic lights. Traffic lights have the important job of helping us avoid collisions with other drivers. They do this by informing us when to go, when to stop, and when to slow down, and they help make us aware of what other drivers are doing. Emotions accomplish something very similar. They help us to avoid collisions of a metaphorical sort with other people. That's because emotions determine how we interact with other people. For example, if you came upon a close friend sobbing in a heap, you probably wouldn't go up to them, give them a big slap across the back, greet them with a "Hey man," and start telling them about your weekend. You would, I hope, use another tactic. We treat people differently based on their emotions. So recognizing how people show those emotions through their own unique combination of facial expression, body language, and voice is important to establishing a good relationship with someone. But it's not enough. Recognizing emotion isn't the end-all be-all. To promote a growth mindset, you can't just see emotion and be sympathetic. You need to be empathetic. Sympathy is recognizing the emotion in someone and feeling for them. I'm sorry that you feel this way. Wow, I can't believe that happened. Yeah, that looks pretty bad. Whereas empathy is feeling with a person. And again, it requires a willingness to be vulnerable because you're trying to find something in yourself that will allow you to feel the emotion that the other person is feeling and connect with a person. Why is that important? In order to promote a growth mindset, we have to be understanding. It's easy for us to write off our own failures. It's easy for us to say, oh, well, I'm going to do better next time when we know it's our fault. We know what we're thinking. We know our future. We know what we plan to do. But when it's someone else's fault and we're still affected, it suddenly becomes a lot harder to forgive that failure. To validate a person despite the harm they've caused you and encouraging them to try again isn't always easy, but there has to be consistency. If you can't allow other people to fail, promoting a growth mindset in your environment is something that just can't happen.
Much like recognizing the emotions in others, effective communication skills also help foster a growth mindset. Communication involves both effective, thoughtful speaking skills and also compassionate listening skills. A lot of the times we think of communication as simply words we use when speaking, and although that is important, most of what we communicate to others is actually through nonverbal communication. We'll go over nonverbal communication skills as well as both speaking and listening skills. These nonverbal communication cues are about how we're saying what we're saying, and it is evident in the tone of voice that can come across as sarcastic or harsh, or when those hints about our core emotion in that moment will show through. When we are stressed about something, that anger or fear will come across in the pitch of our voice, facial expression, and how we are carrying ourselves in the conversation. There are three basic communication styles that can be helpful, especially when we're dealing with a conflict situation. We'll go over some more of these skills later on, but the first one that we're going to talk about is being passive. We call the passive person the doormat because they can be walked all over. They might not stand up for themselves or give in a situation. They might not be as confident as they need to be, so they may be pushed to do something that they don't want to do. They might not be taken seriously or may be taken advantage of. And a lot of those nonverbal cues can really be evident in the passive person through slumped posture, no eye contact, a quiet voice that isn't confident enough to really get their point across. On the contrary, there is the aggressive communicator. This person stands up for themselves, but it's in a forceful way that really disregards the rights of others. They're disrespectful. We might see this through yelling, emotional abuse with the words that we say, or even physical violence. Now, the perfect middle ground between passive and aggressive is what we call assertive, and that's the way to go. That is the happy medium in which there is a meeting point in which we demonstrate our own needs while remaining cognizant of the other person's feelings and how they will perceive you in that moment. We remain calm but firm, and we're able to speak up for ourselves and respect ourselves while also respecting the other person in that situation. This is a short quiz that can help you identify how assertive you are, or if maybe you need to practice being more assertive, and it will be available as a handout at the end of this presentation. Part of being assertive is really about expressing your feelings, asking for what you want in a certain situation, and being very clear on what you don't want or what is maybe a no-go for you. One way to do this is through an I feel statement. An I feel statement looks something like this. It might say, I feel sad when you leave me out and I really need you to include me in a situation such as this. I statements are helpful because they let the person know how you are feeling and why. It takes the guessing and mind reading out of conflict. Your statements are accusatory in a blaming statement or a you statement, such as, you never call me, I guess we just don't talk anymore, or I guess we won't talk anymore. These can be hurtful to that person, create more conflict, and it really blames our feelings on that other person. We own all of our feelings, and as stated earlier, even in rough and hopeless times, we do have control over this. If we want to foster a growth mindset and be effective and efficient with our positive self-talk, using I statements is a really great way to practice that. It's okay to feel the entire array of emotions, both negative and positive, but we need to practice expressing them effectively. We will show a short video on assertiveness demonstrating these skills we talked about so far, and this is something that we have created at CASAC through our video library, and it does include yours truly. We'll have one later on starring Alex, so please enjoy. Standing up for yourself is never easy. We don't want to let people down, we want to fit in. Sometimes we're just not comfortable saying no to someone. But you have to stand up for yourself. You have as much of a right as anyone to think or feel the way you do, and it's okay to let someone know. The key is to be assertive. Confrontations can be handled 3 ways. Passive.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
Which is just accepting without objection or resistance, basically just avoiding the confrontation altogether. Aggressive.
What? Are you kidding me? What kind of friend does that? No!
Acting in a hostile manner, like yelling, screaming, insulting, or even violence. Or there's assertive.
No thanks. You want to go to the beach with me instead?
Which is standing up for your rights while respecting the rights of others. It's expressing yourself while remaining calm. Obviously, being assertive is the best way to go, and normally gives you the best results. Being assertive is also about how you're saying what you're saying. Here are 3 tips. First, control the tone of your voice.
I just want to say something.
It should be firm, authoritative, and moderately loud. You shouldn't be mean or sarcastic, just respectfully stand your ground. Second, eye contact. Make sure you look directly into the eyes you're speaking to. It lets them know you aren't blowing them off and that you're taking them seriously. It's really important. Third is body language. Stand straight with your body directly facing the person you're speaking with. Don't cross your arms, as that's a defensive position. Be open and fully face them. Here are some other ways to handle a difficult situation without being passive or aggressive. Change the subject.
Oh, yeah. But did you hear about that movie that just came out? I really want to see it.
Give a simple no or no thanks.
No thanks.
Give a good reason.
Did you know that your brain is not fully developed until you're like in your mid-20s? And so I really don't want to destroy my brain.
Suggest an alternative.
I'd rather have some coffee. You want to go for coffee?
Or, if nothing else is working, just walk away. We all need to stand our ground, and we don't have to be jerks for it. Be kind, respectful, but firm, and you will never have to worry about letting other people control you or your actions. Now we're going to focus more on active listening, which is that other end of communication. Active listeners are actively involved in the whole conversation, even when they are not the one that is speaking. They show interest and make sure that they understand the message. They focus solely on the speaker and fully participate in a conversation, and part of that is avoiding planning their reply. A lot of times when we're listening to someone, we're just thinking of the next thing that we're going to say. And active listening is really kind of taking that selfish part out of communication, demonstrating that empathy for that person. One way to be an active listener is to reflect the feelings of that person. Say something like, I can imagine how upsetting that must have been, or I really can see how you would feel that way. When we encourage the person, we let them know that we want to understand how they're feeling, what might be upsetting them, or we let them know you have my undivided attention. Go ahead, I'm here to listen, you're here to speak. By validating that person, we show that we understand why they're feeling that way, or that we just really appreciate that they're having that conversation with us. When we clarify something, we ask a question so that we really can fully understand what that person is trying to say and what they're communicating with us. So we might say, is that how you feel, or can you tell me more about that? And lastly, when we restate what that person is saying, it shows that we really took in their conversation and understood it fully. We might say something like, it sounds like you weren't expecting that to happen. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to show a little video from The Big Bang Theory, and we're going to see if the characters demonstrate good active listening skills.
First there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
You know, however, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
Well, you wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, see, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Oh, wait a second. Who's they?
Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
So, an entertaining example there. We see that a lot of the active listening strategies that Trish mentioned were shown in this video. We saw Amy encouraging, maybe going a little over the top, but restating, asking clarifying questions. Well, you don't want your gaming system to overheat, and who is they, and are they nuts? And while, of course, we as the audience could tell that there was some underlying frustration there, the over-the-top examples do help highlight some of those techniques that we want to put into practice, maybe a little less sarcastically in our own conversations and our own communication. When you rub communication and emotion together, you will occasionally come into some conflict. And conflict isn't a bad thing. I know a lot of times when we look at our relationships, we try to avoid conflict, or we see the perfect relationship as one that is without conflict. But realistically, conflict is inevitable, and it's not something to be embarrassed about. It's not something to get frustrated over, as long as it's being handled the right way. We're going to talk about a couple of conflict rules, ways to have healthy arguments in the next slide. But leading up to that, when we look at conflict, just to lay a little bit of background, we want to make sure that our conflict avoids exaggeration. We want to make sure that we are using words like always or never, using those absolutes. We want to make sure that we discuss one issue at a time. We don't want to dig up the past. We don't want to have another argument that distracts from the one that we started with. One issue at a time, and then moving on to the next. We want to make sure that we aren't using degrading language or name calling. That goes right back to the communication styles that Trish mentioned a couple of slides ago. We want to make sure that we're being assertive and we're not bordering into aggressive territory where we're letting our feelings, our emotions get the better of us and attack the person as opposed to discussing the issue at hand. We want to make sure that we're not stonewalling, and if that emotion threatens to overwhelm the conversation that is happening, we want to make sure that we can recognize that and take a time out when needed. We want to make sure that what is most important is the issue that's being discussed, and it's not one person versus the other, it's both people versus the argument, both people versus the issue. There is no winner or loser, it's two people attempting to come to a compromise or to an understanding. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and show you another video from our CASAC library starring myself and one of my coworkers, Eric, to talk a little bit more about conflict resolution.
Hey, guess what? You're wrong sometimes. It's okay. We all make mistakes. That's the way we learn and grow. See, sometimes we need to confront each other about the conflict. Healthy arguments are essential to healthy relationships. It's not always easy though. When our brains are challenged, the emotional part of our brains get activated. Like when I told you were wrong, a little part of you got mad, didn't it? Yelling at each other, name calling, projecting anger all over isn't going to solve anything. That's not a healthy argument. Air quotes. There's no back and forth, there's no listening. It's all unchecked emotion and we get nowhere. Here are some things you can do to control the emotions and have a healthy argument. First, think Q-tip. Quit taking it personal. When we argue, we're thinking of ourselves and ways to express our viewpoint. In other words, when they talk, it's about them. Even if it seems like they're making it about you, it's really about them. So don't take it personal. Don't blame someone for the way you feel.
It's your fault I'm hurt. You did that thing, and it's on you.
When you put all the focus on them, you stop communicating your own viewpoint. Instead, calmly explain the cause and effect of the situation by using an I statement.
I felt really hurt when you did that thing because it broke our trust.
Stay focused and explain your position and your feelings. Speaking of staying focused, always give them your undivided attention. Don't be on your phone, watching YouTube, giving them the silent treatment. Would you want that? Give them the same respect you want. Face them, look them in the eyes, and let them communicate. Don't use extremes.
You're always this.
Or,
you are the most that.
Really? Is that true? Of course not. You're just being a little dramatic, because your emotional brain is active. Keep that emotion in check and be real. Another way to keep that emotion in check is to not yell or call names. You ever hear the phrase, don't shoot the messenger?
Oh yeah? Toenail chomper, cootie farm, booger eater.
When you start attacking the person, you stop addressing the actual problem. You're attacking the messenger. It doesn't make any sense. And if someone is yelling at you or calling you names, make sure that you set boundaries. Let them know, hey, that's not cool, and we're not going to do that. If they refuse and constantly belittle you, there's nothing wrong with just walking away. But we'll come back to that. Discuss one issue at a time. Don't be jumping around from topic to topic, interrupting, creating a brand new argument in the middle of the one that you're having. Focus on the issue being discussed and resolve that one before you move forward to any others. Finally, if all these points fail and it's too emotional for you and for them, take a break. Excuse yourself, walk away.
Look, I really want to finish this, but let's take a break. I need a minute.
Take some deep breaths, calm down, then go back into the conversation with a clear head. Life can be rough for us, and we need each other to get through it. Let's start working through our disagreements and having healthy arguments so we can learn more about each other and come out stronger and be better people. Oh, and when you're wrong, admit it. Apologize, learn from it, and move forward. We're only human.
All right, that just about takes us to the end of our training today. Before we let you loose, we would like to review some of the objectives that we discussed at the beginning, just to talk one more time about some of our topics for today. We started off by defining the flavors of stress, looking at the difference between eustress, which we see as a more positive, motivational type of stress, and distress, which was that negative stress that was discouraging, took a lot of the energy out of us, and tended to stick around with us for the long term.
We identified the causes of stress, such as acute stressors, those more short-term events, versus long-term chronic stress, and how that really manifests biologically in our body. We also looked at some of those other underlying emotions that might cause stress.
We also talked about some coping strategies for each of those different flavors of stress. When we look at short-term stress, doing things that make us happy, things that make us laugh, exercise, anything that can help combat the stress response that our body puts us through. And then some long-term techniques like changing up our mindset, doing things that help us look for the positives, anything to change how we take in the world around us, which led us into growth mindset.
We defined what growth mindset was. We looked at our example from that Netflix documentary with Brene Brown and how we can use that growth mindset in our workplace, how we can learn to be vulnerable and think more positively.
And then finally, we looked at a couple of skills to promote growth mindset in whatever environment you find yourself, making sure that you are looking for, recognizing, and understanding the emotions of other people, practicing effective communication, and being sure to practice healthy argument techniques with a coworker, a friend, a significant other, whoever that might be. We do hope that you enjoyed today's training. We would like to thank you for sticking around with us today. And of course, don't forget to follow the provided links for some of our resources and the short quiz for your OASIS credit and certificate. And with that, we will leave you with our references. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.